In this episode, we see Kamari, who has just completed her masterpiece, claiming that it will surpass her previous work, Strawberry Milk, which she had created before. As the time grew late, Kamari decided to go to bed. However, when she arrived at her bed, she found Vilhais waiting for her without a single thread of clothing on. Vilhais intended to warm the bed for the tired Kamari with her own skin. Naturally, Kamari was furious with the lewd maid. Elsewhere on the same night, someone lay covered in blood, looking like Kamari's father. Next to him, there was a silver-haired woman with blood-covered hands. And from her red eyes, we could tell she possessed the core implosion ability. The next morning, Kamari, Chastel, and Vilhais walked together. They were going to meet the Empress. Kamari appeared quite annoyed because the Empress had summoned her suddenly. She asked why Chastel was there too. It turns out Chastel had something to give to Kamari, a t-shirt with an unusual portrait of Kamari's face. Chastel was very proud of her design, thinking it was excellent. She also mentioned that the product was selling well. Chastel encouraged Kamari to wear it, but Kamari naturally declined because it would make them both look exactly the same. Chastel argued that it would make them twice as cute. Kamari, even though soaked from the rain and lacking other clothes, refused to wear it. Frustrated, Kamari asked Vilhais to scold Chastel, but Vilhais mentioned she had already bought 100 of them. Kamari became even more irritated. Suddenly, from behind, someone greeted Kamari, a woman who admired her consecutive victories in battles. However, she also belittled Kamari, suggesting that her troops only targeted the weak and that Kamari simply sat in a safe place during battles, giving orders indiscriminately. The woman accused Kamari of being weak at heart. Startled, Kamari asked, "Who are you?" Her response caught the woman off guard. Naturally, Vilhais and Chastel, who heard the question, could barely contain their laughter. Angrily, the woman, who turned out to be a member of the Crimson Lord, felt that Kamari was insulting her. She introduced herself as Float Masquerail, the Black Lightning, a member of the wise and mighty Crimson Lord. Vilhais then praised Kamari for daring to challenge the most popular Crimson Lord in the Empire. Kamari, of course, was infuriated because if Vilhais had known all along, she should have informed her. Float also felt underestimated by Kamari. Vilhais then apologized and offered a gift as an apology: a loaf of blood-filled bread and a t-shirt with a strange portrait of Kamari's face. As Float glared at the t-shirt with anger, Vilhais claimed that Kamari was the strongest and sweetest girl in the world. Vilhais also stated that if Float attempted to provoke Kamari with such low-level tactics, it seemed that she didn't understand the facts. Vilhais continued to agitate Float, and in great anger, Float destroyed the t-shirt with her magic, stating that she and Kamari could never be friends. Float also advised that Kamari could be in trouble if she acted arrogantly just because Her Majesty Karen cared for her. Kamari was puzzled once again, wondering who Her Majesty Karen was. Float became irritated, believing it was impossible that Kamari didn't know the Empress's name. And indeed, Kamari was unaware of this. Float also mentioned why the Empress had bestowed blessings upon Kamari, a vampire who relied solely on her family name. She added that a similar case had befallen Sakuna Memoir, a truly unfunny joke. In essence, Float wanted to see Kamari's military capabilities that justified her being a Crimson Lord. Kamari promised to show it, but not today. Finally, Float departed from their presence. Kamari then arrived at the Empress's location, where she was leisurely enjoying ice cream. After struggling to open the heavy, massive door to the Empress's room, she immediately shoved an orange-flavored ice cream that she had just eaten into Kamari's mouth. Immediately, Kamari asked what important matter had summoned her. But the Empress just laughed and asked how her indirect kiss tasted. Kamari replied, "Don't say something disgusting. It's clearly orange flavor." The Empress then continued her conversation, informing Kamari that her father had been murdered by an unknown person last night. Hearing this, Kamari was shocked. The Empress reassured her, saying that her father would rise again today with Dark Core's power. It seemed that Kamari's father was attacked on his way home after a meeting. Someone had pierced his abdomen with bare hands, and it turned out that Kamari's father was not the only victim. In the past week, 5 government executives had been killed. Furthermore, one of them was a Crimson Lord. All the victims were unaware that they had been killed, and they couldn't remember the attacker's face. The terrorist might possess memory manipulation magic. It was also possible that this wasn't magic but core implosion. The Empress instructed Kamari to capture the terrorist. Of course, Kamari flatly refused. She mentioned that she had been working continuously without a day off since yesterday. The Empress then offered an incentive to Kamari. If she could capture the terrorist, she would grant her a 1-week leave. Kamari was delighted to hear this, but she was very pessimistic about her ability to capture the terrorist. The Empress then said that Kamari wouldn't complete this mission alone and summoned Sukuna Memoir, a girl who would assist Kamari in accomplishing the mission. Kamari was impressed by Sukuna's cuteness and beauty. Sukuna inadvertently said that Kamari was very beautiful in front of her. With confidence, Kamari stated that she was indeed a beautiful girl born once every 100 million years. The Empress then explained that the terrorist was powerful enough to kill a Crimson Lord, so they had to work together to solve this case. Kamari initially hesitated to collaborate with Sukuna because she seemed very naive. However, the Empress assured her that Sukuna was determined to seek revenge on the terrorist. Sukuna then introduced herself and revealed that she was a Crimson Lord, one of the victims of the terrorist. She was eager to capture the terrorist to restore her honor. Kamari was taken aback to learn that the seemingly innocent girl was also a Crimson Lord. With a hint of shyness, Sukuna gave Kamari a letter and asked her to read it later before bidding her farewell. In the letter, Sukuna expressed her lack of confidence in saying it directly, so she wrote it in a letter. She introduced herself, mentioning her hobby of reading. She also recounted how she became a Crimson Lord by accidentally killing the previous Crimson Lord, resulting in her being chosen to inherit the position. She felt inadequate as a Crimson Lord but couldn't quit because those who left without permission were subject to being detonated. She had tarnished the Empire by being killed by a terrorist, and if left unchecked, her fate of being detonated would draw near. Thus, she wanted to capture the terrorist with her own hands. Sukuna promised to do her best to complete the mission with Kamari. Kamari read the letter on the edge of an open field where her troops were training. After reading it, she was even more impressed by Sukuna's sincerity. Vilhaze, who was beside her, naturally felt jealous and asked if the girl was to Kamari's taste. Kamari replied that she quite liked her. Kamari then stood up and wanted to meet Sukuna, but Vilhaze stopped her, explaining that if she wanted to meet Sukuna, they needed to discuss their plan to capture the terrorist. Kamari felt she wouldn't be able to do much, so Vilhaze suggested that she utilize her subordinates since she had 500 wild subordinates. Right then, Vilhaze recommended that Kamari give orders. Everyone present fell silent as Kamari spoke. She explained that she had received orders from the Empress to capture the serial murderer terrorist and now asked for her subordinates' assistance. Her subordinates appeared highly motivated. Chastel, who was beside Kamari, then suggested providing rewards to anyone who could apprehend the perpetrator. That would surely make them 100 times more enthusiastic. Kamari contemplated what gift she would give, and she had an idea to grant a 3-day leave to the one who succeeded. However, her subordinates appeared dejected and lacked enthusiasm. Kamari was puzzled. Chastel explained that to them, it was not a reward because their hobby was killing. If they had time off, they would actually be disappointed since they couldn't wreak havoc on the battlefield. Hearing this, Kamari added that it wasn't just an ordinary leave, but that she would give them tickets to the zoo, showing 2 tickets in her hands. Her subordinates still didn't seem enthusiastic, and one of them asked if the tickets were for going with Kamari. Kamari replied that it could be like that if they wished. Instantly, the atmosphere became silent. Vilhaze emitted a dark aura and felt it had gone too far. All of a sudden, the subordinates regained their enthusiasm. They immediately left, ready to do whatever it took to go with Kamari. Now, they seemed more like terrorists. After that, Vilhaze and Kamari went to Sukuna's room. Vilhaze rudely kicked the door to enter. In Sukuna's room, there was Heldu's Heaven, another Crimson Lord whose primary job was as a priest. Seeing Kamari and Vilhaze about to meet Sukuna, Heldius said his farewells and left. Coincidentally, it was lunchtime, so Kamari invited Sukuna to have lunch and discuss the matter. When they arrived at the restaurant, Kamari attracted a lot of attention from the people there. They admired Kamari, who was already famous as a great commander with extraordinary strength. In her heart, Kamari felt like she had chosen the wrong restaurant. Sukuna then asked Kamari if she had read her letter. Kamari confirmed and was curious about how Sukuna could kill the previous Crimson Lord. Sukuna explained that she was practicing magic at the time, and accidentally, a Crimson Lord walked by, and her magic unintentionally hit him, killing him. Kamari then thought that perhaps the difficult part for Sukuna was trying to hide her weaknesses. If they found out she was weak, they would likely betray her. However, Sukuna replied that it wouldn't happen because her subordinates already knew she wasn't very strong. Still, they helped her so she could work as a Crimson Lord. That's why, even though she wanted to quit, she felt she had to keep trying. In her heart, Kamari admitted she was jealous to hear this. Sukuna continued by saying she was greatly impressed by Kamari for her outstanding performance as a Crimson Lord. Vilhaze, who had been restraining herself during their intimate conversation, couldn't take it any longer and said it was time to discuss work. Vilhaze felt they should be cautious because the terrorist was suspected to have core implosion abilities. Sukuna hoped she wouldn't be a burden since she admitted her strength was only equivalent to crushing an apple with one hand. Hearing this, Kamari secretly thought that Sukuna wasn't as weak as she claimed to be. Vilhaze continued, saying that the terrorist only appeared at night and only within the Mole Knight Imperial Palace area. This meant they only needed to patrol the palace at night. Kamari quickly responded that if they worked at night, it meant she could sleep in until the afternoon. Vilhaze rejected this idea, saying that Kamari still had to work from 9 in the morning until 8 at night. Kamari protested because she didn't want to work for such long hours. However, due to public pressure, Kamari eventually agreed to it. Suddenly, there was a fairly loud explosion. Kamari thought it might be a terrorist attack. They left the restaurant and saw Belius, Chastel, and all of their troops lying unconscious. Using her magic, Sukuna healed Belius and explained that she and the other troops had been defeated by Float Masquerade. From behind, Melikonsi jumped down from an explosion. In a somewhat rap-like manner, he mentioned that Float was very angry and causing a commotion. Hearing Melikonsi speaking in an unclear rap tone, Kamari was naturally annoyed and asked him to speak normally. In a flat tone, Melikonsi then stated that Float attacked them first, so he retaliated. Kamari was surprised to see Melikonsi speaking like a regular human. Float then provided clarification, stating that she did it all because Kamari's troops had falsely accused her first. In reality, she was only doing her duty. With a swift movement, Float attacked Kamari with her sword, but fortunately, Sukuna intercepted it with her staff. Sukuna advised against sudden attacks like that. Float claimed it was unintentional because her hand slipped. Kamari was angry and asked Float what her subordinates had done. Float replied, saying they had damaged property and attempted murder. Kamari's subordinates had run rampant in the Emperor's palace, and Float was trying to stop them. Float taunted Kamari, saying that besides her unclear abilities, she couldn't even discipline her own subordinates. There had never been a Crimson Lord like her before. Float decided to propose a vote of no confidence in Kamari at the Crimson Lord meeting. With that, Float left the scene. In the evening, Kamari, Sukuna, and Vilhaze went on patrol. At that moment, Vilhaze's core implosion ability, Pandora Poison, was active because Float had finally consumed the blood-filled bread she had given. Vilhaze explained that her core implosion allowed her to see the future of someone who drank her blood. She had included her blood as a gift given to Float. Vilhaze saw that in the Crimson Lord meeting 3 days from now, Kamari would face criticism and the Crimson Lords would vote, resulting in Kamari exploding. Kamari was shocked and frightened to hear this. Sukuna tried to comfort her, saying that she would stand by Kamari. Kamari thanked Sukuna and gently stroked her head. Sukuna was very pleased with Kamari's affection and regarded her as an older sister. Kamari was delighted to have a younger sister like Sukuna. Sukuna then called Kamari Onuchan, and Kamari felt overjoyed. Vilhaze interrupted their conversation and said it was not the time for jokes. She mentioned that even though Sukuna supported Kamari, there were still 5 other Crimson Lords left, and most of them would oppose Kamari. Vilhais suggested that Kamari leave the matter to her. Bowing her head, Vilhais claimed that she was a kind person too. Kamari then gently patted Vilhais' head. Observing this, Sukuna realized that Kamari actually disliked fighting. Most of the other Crimson Lords typically resolved issues through violence, such as Float, who silenced her opponents with force. Kamari argued that she didn't like unnecessary fights and preferred to resolve things through peaceful discussions if possible.